Welcome to the next generation of warfare, psychological warfare. In modern conflict, the mind is a potent weapon. Discover General Michael T. Flynn's groundbreaking guide, The Citizen's Guide to Fifth Generation Warfare. Unlock tactics, strategies, and the mindset to navigate this cognitive battlefield that we all find ourselves in. Equip yourself against manipulation and emerge unscathed. Unleash your potential. Order now.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the AlphaWarrior Show. It is Wednesday night. It is July 22nd, 2026, which means it is Operation Gladio night. I hope you guys can hear me. And look at what, dang, already a bot troll over here trying to put, you guys don't click those links that say trackdot.com. They will steal your info. So let me just ban this person. Didn't mean to disrupt you guys, but those ones are bad. That's worse than a troll. They're trying to steal from you guys. You guys, July 22nd, 2026. I got the Colonel with me. Let's keep her signal in our prayers as she's going through a storm right now. We're going to try to make the best of this situation. So in the interest of trying to do that, I will save all my ads to later in the show, and we'll get Colonel on right now. So if you see her start glitching, you guys, we will adjust like the veterans we are. And if you guys can only see the stuff she's doing back in the studio right now, it's absolutely hilarious. So again, support the people that support this show. All those links down in the description below. Let me bring on the Colonel. Your signal was working while you were in the studio.
So I was explaining to Alpha our raid schedule here, and I've been talking about this a lot over the last couple of weeks about how messed up our weather is. And literally 5 seconds before the show goes on, the entire sky opened up. And I want to show people, I don't know if you can see that on there. Literally out of nowhere, there's just a band right over my house of rain. And I snapshot it on the radar and I sent it to him. I says, the bastards.
Murphy's Law. Murphy's Law. Tonight's episode seems like it might get a little spicy. So,
I'm reading a book. I'm always reading a book, but this particular book is called The Spooks. It's just for, I've been talking about it because it kind of is going in parallel with the book we're doing on our show called The Great Heroin Coup, and it's freaking me out. But because I bought this book and read it like 2 years ago, and I just bought this book. And they're like going parallel with each other. So it's so weird. But there were two very fundamental entities that were talked about in this book called Spooks that I'd never heard of. So we're going to hear about them tonight and next week. And they're critical to understanding the underpinnings of this octopus that we're dealing with. Because people think, and we've talked a lot about the CIA, but it's never, ever been just the CIA. And what's interesting about the two entities that we're going to talk about tonight, 3 eyes or 5 eyes, and you'll understand why there's a difference there. And the one we're going to talk about next week, which I'm going to keep in suspense, is they both come together in a very nefarious way and are at the focal point of both of them when they merge timelines is Donald Trump. And it's very, very interesting. So we're going to, over the next few weeks, kind of unfold this entire thing. So tonight we're going to start with what was originally referred to as 3 eyes, as a pun off of 5 eyes. It's kind of like a junior. And it stood for International Investigators Incorporated. And because it was located in a very odd place, Indianapolis, Indiana, it was jokingly referred to as Five Eyes because it's literally five eyes. International Investigators Incorporated, Indianapolis, Indiana. So this entity was chartered in Indianapolis, Indiana. The firm's formal incorporation, these dates are going to be very important, took place on October 3rd, 1966. What was going on in 1966? LBJ's president, we're in the Vietnam War, all kinds of crazy things are going on. We had just 2 years before, overthrew Brazil. Country, kind of the very jump start of what will become Operation Condor. So those things are flying around. But the files in the Indiana Secretary of State's office show that this was actually created 5 years earlier in 1961. Weirdly enough, it was created by 3 retiring FBI agents. They were granted license to work on private investigators for International Investigators Incorporated. So if they were granted license under that name, isn't it weird that they don't actually charter the company for 5 years later? It seems strange that in February of 1961, when the license were granted, the firm had no legal existence. So how did they even get their license? Because you have to have basically a company. This would indicate that the 3 FBI agents created a private investigative organization immediately after JFK took office. Does that sound vaguely familiar?
I'm listening.
Within 2 years, the still imaginary firm expanded throughout the Midwest. Again, the firm does not exist as a corporation. You just got these 3 guys with investigative license. Interestingly enough, this figment of our imagination corporation opened offices in Chicago, which is where one of the attempted assassinations would later occur, Detroit, both mafia havens, Louisville, Kentucky, Nashville, Memphis, which of course is where a whole bunch of nefarious shit happens in the 1960s, to include MLK's assassination, and Minneapolis, Minnesota. Coincidentally, including a great deal of wiretapping happened in these locations. They all have heavy mafia presentations, some more than others, and was known to operate with CIA connections in all of those locations. In 1965, the firm was taken over by a mysterious former CIA officer by the name of Bert Servos. Now I'm going to spell this because this is a weird name. Beurt. His last name can be spelled as one word or a hyphenated word. It's SER. Sometimes it appears with a hyphen there, and then SAAS. He would later become the owner and publisher of the Saturday Evening Post. Now, for those of us who were born in the 60s and grew up know that the Saturday Evening Post was a famous periodical. It was known for its covers, the beautiful pictures on the covers. So let's take a look at Bert. He was an Indiana University graduate, spook, served initially as a naval intelligence officer. And guess what theater he served in? Southeast Asia. As an OSS officer, where Paul Helliwell and Lucien Koenig and all of those nefarious people that set up the Asian Golden Triangle opium trade. So he just happens to be hanging out with all of those same people. He served on the American Legion's National Foreign Policy Committee. There are notes that you can find of different positions that the American Legion's National Foreign Policy Committee wrote. I found one specifically in 1952 with his name on it. In 1970, he acquired and became the chairman of a thing called Curtis Publishing Company, which publishes more than a dozen magazines. They included the Saturday Evening Post. His business empire was called Servas Incorporated. It then included also 21 companies that specialized in everything from European foreign trade. And what were we doing in Europe trade-wise? His wife's a doctor, so it included pharmaceutical licensing and manufacturing. He later actually attends medical school at Indiana University himself, and which I find very, very weird. And he earned a doctorate in medical science. Here's a quote from him. "I am involved in medical research as well as the development of new pharmaceuticals and instrumentations aimed at the 21st century practice," unquote. He did that through a foundation that him and his wife, Corey, set up. They continued to publish the Saturday Evening Post. And for those of you my age, you will recognize several of their other publications: Jack and Jill, Humpty Dumpty, Weekly Reader magazine that we all got in school, the Children's Digest, Child's Life, and the periodical called Turtle. I don't remember Turtle or Child's Life, but I definitely remember all the rest of them. His wife, as I mentioned, was a doctor and spent some time in some very interesting areas of medicine. He was very active in apartheid South Africa. He was, and this is where it got very, very interesting. He was not a normal publisher. So a guy by the name of McGolf and a German publisher by the name of Axel Springer also offered an undisclosed amount of money to help the apartheid regime take control. So they were going to use him as a front. He travels routinely to South Africa. He's very involved in South Africa, maintaining an apartheid country. So he's approached on one of these trips to basically front a company to buy what was called at the time the Rand Daily Mail, known to be the only publication in South Africa that was critical of the current white government. McGough said at the time that he was making the bid for this both business and political reasons. And according to a man by the name of Ratief van Rooyen, a lawyer formerly connected with another publication called The Citizen, and with covert operational ties to the South African government or Department of Information, so their psychological department. Magoff was also thinking of taking over The Citizen, financed by a secret government fund. So they're taking government money, laundering it, and using this man to be the front of the acquisition of the only opposition paper in the South African, big cities. So let's see. They use these secret government funds, and the publication begins print in 1976 in an effort to counter adverse publicity about the white minority regime. The Citizen was eventually sold to two Americans, Bert Servas, publisher of the Saturday Evening Post, and David Witt, a Dallas attorney. He liked hanging out in Dallas too, a lot. They served as a front for the South African government's ownership. Witt served with the FBI as well. Not as long as the other guys that created the Three Eyes, but he definitely was involved in the FBI. And then he went into private law practice in Dallas. A deal was arranged to sell one of the interests to a group of American businessmen, including David Witt. Okay, the purchase was facilitated with government money, and the Americans were intended to serve as a quote-unquote channel to obscure the covert funding. They took ownership of the newspaper that had been secretly capitalized with taxpayer money from South Africa, allowing the government to maintain control of a English language mouthpiece while insulating themselves from direct responsibility. So we've got confirmation this guy's a covert operator, right? And he's involved in information operations, psychological operations, whatever you want to call it. All right. He also was involved in a thing called the Hudson Institute Board of Trustees. He also served some time on the Robert Schuller Ministries. In 1965, the branch offices were deemed unnecessary, because Kennedy's gone. We don't need to keep them things up. And Servas added 6 new investigators to his Indianapolis staff, making each of them a director. Of these, at least 3 had also come from the FBI. It was, what is something on my computer keeps like changing my screen. All right. Let me see where I was at. It keeps like flipping my screen. So they have a top secret private intelligence agencies with contacts from the FBI, IRS, and other government agencies. Its employees were said to identify themselves using doodlegrams. They would scribble things that look like pentagrams on paper to identify themselves to each other.
It's not
as
weird.
Like code things. Does that sound like a normal private investigators?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
Sounds cultish.
It sounds very clandestine. Cultish. Okay. So I mentioned already that they were very involved in what most people would deem illegal wiretaps. They also had a habit of invading private areas and illegally wiretapping people. But what is even more threatening is the general practice of subcontracting illegal government operations to private firms secretly supported by private monies under the protection of the CIA. And that is basically exactly what they were doing. Now, the reason why this is so important today in what we're going through right now, you just had the woman that said in the FBI that she was running a covert operation, like a secret government. And where did they hide her? In Microsoft. And so all of our audience knows that these oligarch corporations are seated with FBI and CIA people as part of sheep dipping, right? So if you want to, and we've already talked about on a program that I did about the U2, how they took active duty officers and they transferred them to the reserves. So they're technically not on active duty. And those reserve officers would be contracted to the CIA to fly the U2. That's called sheep dipping. And this was a common practice. So what we need to be thinking about at all times is these people that say they retired or they're labeled as former CIA or former FBI may in fact not be that at all. Because go ahead.
Just to interrupt you real quick. One, finding this information on David Witt is the Bert Servas is a lot easier. However, as I'm searching the name, I did come across what happened this year. This is being reported through WPBF, but you guys remember it was all over the news too. The FBI says a former Air Force counterintelligence officer, last name Witt, the female, has been charged with spying for Iran and is still at large. And now there's a $200,000 reward for information leading to her arrest. So granted, it's the last name. I don't know how popular the last name Witt is, but just given counterintelligence and we know how legacy families work, it's just, I find it just coincidentally pretty close.
Okay. All right. So they're simultaneously immune to both prosecution for misdeeds when they're in this status, because they're under basically the protection of the CIA, and to the ordinary constraints of the marketplace. Private intelligence agencies in the employ of a powerful oligarch class are beyond the control of all but their clientele. Which I would argue the CIA operates like that on a daily basis, because they certainly do not work for the chief executive. All right. One of their other associates was a guy by the name of Walter Sheridan. CBS aired a special in 1967. NBC broadcast an outright hatchet job on Garrison, the guy that's investigating the JFK's assassination, presided over by none other than Walter Sheridan. Walter Sheridan is a member of the Three Eyes organization. And he goes on NBC and CBS and basically trashes Garrison's investigation of the JFK assassination. He was a known veteran of the intelligence community. Sheridan had worked for the FBI. He had also worked for the Office of Naval Intelligence and was a principal figure in counterintelligence at the NSA. Also, Sheridan had strong, deep connections to the CIA itself. Dadgummit, stop doing that. Conventional wisdom about Walter Sheridan places him as a former FBI man. Reportedly, he worked at the Bureau for 4 years. Good grief. Sheridan's ties to the intelligence community beyond the FBI were deep and wide and complex. He himself said that, like Guy Bannister, the guy that was intimately involved in the whole JFK cover-up and execution, he had been with the Office of Naval Intelligence. Then, after he left the Bureau, Sheridan did not go directly to the Justice Department. He moved over to the newly established NSA. This was a super secret body created under President Truman in 1952, both supposedly to protect domestic codes and communications, to gather intelligence through cracking foreign codes. It was so clandestine at the time that it was not even acknowledged as a government organization. They attempted to deny its existence repeatedly. Therefore, for a long time, it operated in total secrecy. Neither the Congress nor the federal government had any oversight over it. It's worth noting that in addition to Sheridan's deep intelligence background, NBC itself had deep ties that were later exposed in the 1975 investigation by Congress into the CIA's control of ABC, NBC, and CBS. So, an author by the name of Jim DiEugenio wrote a book called Destiny Betrayed. It's relevant to note that a General David Sarnoff, Sarnoff, was founder of NBC, worked for the Signal Corps in World War II as a reserve officer, and in 1944, Sarnoff worked for the complete restoration of the Nazi-destroyed Radio France station in Paris until its signal was able to reach throughout Europe. Definitely a PSYOPs guy. This entity was then retitled Radio Free Europe, which we know is a front for the CIA. He later lobbied the White House to expand the range and reach of Radio Free Europe. At about this time, Radio Free Europe became a pet project of Alan Dulles'. Sarnoff's company, Radio Corporation of America, RCA, became a large part of the technological core of the NSA. During the war, David's son, Robert, worked in the broadcast arm of the OSS. This is the guy that is at the base of NBC. Robert was the president of RCA, NBC's parent company, and at the time Sheridan Special ran, David was the chairman of it. What? So the entire attack on Garrison's investigation was done through this infrastructure by at least one guy in this investigative organization called Three Eyes, and has CIA on every side of it. That's crazy.
Especially when we try to figure out what are they today.
Correct. Well, somebody, I don't remember who it was, made a post just a little bit ago on X about how none of the mainstream media is publishing the one. His name's Hans. He's an investigative reporter who went over and talked to the guy, the Russian that is still under sanctions, that came, and I think he was originally Ukrainian, that basically told Grassley and all of those guys everything that had went on. And he's the first guy that unveiled the Carter Page setup and all this other stuff. And he is still currently under sanctions. And they've ruined his life. And Hans was making the point that none of the mainstream media, and I said, are we still pretending like they're mainstream media? We all learned in 1975, they were all on the payroll of the CIA. Why are we still carrying out this charade? They are not media. They've never been media. They are tentacles of the CIA. Why are we still playing this game? It makes no sense. So anyway, that's my rant.
I agree completely with you. And they have rebranded into podcasts, social media influencers. It's you know my position on this right now.
Yes. All right. So Sheridan also presided over a quote unquote private investigative institution, which was in fact a CIA front. It is worth noting that Bert Servas, an alumni of the 3I, purchased the Saturday Evening Post, which published an anti-Garrison hit piece by James Phelan. The company was International Investigators, Inc., the 3 I's. According to a Senate investigation, quote, it was owned lock, stock, and barrel by the CIA, unquote. That's a Senate investigator that said that. Two of the original principals, George Miller and George Ryan, were like Bannister, former G-men who later went to work for the CIA cover outfits. According to another source, not only was Sheridan the liaison to 3 I's, he disposed over the personnel and he was in charge of the personnel and currency of whole units of the CIA out of the White House. By 1965, 3 I's was taken over by two quote unquote former CIA officers. One of them was Bert Servas, who later purchased the Evening Post. One more startling revelation of the Senate investigation uncovered an affidavit by a man by the name of Fred Lehman, Leemans. Lehman was a Turkish bath owner who originally told Garrison that a man named Clay Bertrand had frequented his establishment. Lehman was the climatic interview for Sheridan's special. He testified on the show that the DA's office had actually approached him first, that he never knew that Shaw used the alias Bertrand, that everything that he had previously said to the DA's office were things he was led to say by them. Basically, he's saying that Garrison was coaching him, and that they had offered to pay him $2,500 for his affidavit, in which he would now say that Shaw was Bertrand and that Shaw came into his establishment once with Lee Harvey Oswald. In other words, all the things that he had been saying in his public declarations about Garrison was accurate. At the end of his interview, Lehman's told Sheridan that the public had everything he had just revealed on camera, and it would be given to NBC freely and voluntarily. Lehman's even said that he had actually asked Sheridan for money, help, but Sheridan had said he didn't do those kinds of things. But in January of 1969, Lehman signed an affidavit in which he declared the following as true. And this is a direct quote. I would like to state for reasons for which I appeared on the NBC News and lied about my contacts with the district attorney's office. First, I received numerous anonymous threatening phone calls relative to the information I had given to Mr. Garrison. Because let me just stop right here. What he had told Mr. Garrison, number one, he was never paid by Garrison. And number two, He told Garrison that he had seen Oswald and that Clay Shaw had used an alias, Clay Bertrand. So he goes on this CIA-owned show, produced show, to basically throw Garrison under the bus, right? And say that he was offered money for it. So he then does an actual legal affidavit, because nothing he said on that news show was under affidavit or anything else. It was basically all a lie. But in a legal affidavit, he says, the gist of these calls that I was receiving was to the effect that if I did not change my statement and state that I had been bribed by Jim Garrison's office, I and my family would be in physical danger. In addition to the anonymous phone calls, I was visited by a man who exhibited a badge and stated that he was a government agent. This man informed me that the government was presently checking my bar owners in Slidell for possible income tax violations. This man then inquired whether I was Mr. Lehman's involved in the Clay Shaw case. When I informed him that I was, he said that it was not smart to be involved because a lot of people had gotten hurt, that people in powerful positions would see to it that I was taken care of. One of the anonymous callers suggested that I change my statement and state that I had been bribed by Garrison's office to give him the information about Clay Shaw. He suggested that I contact Mr. Irvin Diamond, attorney for Clay Shaw, and tell him that I gave Mr. Garrison the statement about Shaw only after Mr. Lee, Garrison's assistant, offered me $2,500. After consulting with Mr. Diamond by telephone and in person, I was introduced to Mr. Walter Sheridan, investigative reporter for NBC or the CIA, whichever one you want to say, who was in the process of preparing the NBC show. Mr. Diamond and Mr. Sheridan suggested that I appear on the show and state that I had originally told Mr. Diamond about the bribe offer from the DA's office. I was informed by Mr. Diamond that should the district attorney's office charge me with giving false information as a result of the statement I had originally given them, he would see to it that I had an attorney and that a bond would be posted for me. In this connection, Mr. Diamond gave me his home and office phone number and then advised me that I could contact him at any time, day or night, should I be charged by Garrison's office as a result of my appearing on the NBC News. My actual appearance on the show was taped in the office of Aaron Kahn, marketing director of the Metropolitan Crime Commission, in the presence of Mr. Sheridan and Irvin Diamond, unquote. This is one of the most revealing documents portraying the length to which Sheridan would go to tamper with witnesses. It also demonstrates that Shaw's lawyers, Bill and Ed Wigman, Irvin Diamond, and Sal Piezeska, knew almost no boundaries in what kind of help they would accept to win their case. It also reveals that Shaw's lawyers had access to a network of attorneys that they could hire at any time for any witness that they could pry loose from Garrison. Because, as the declassified documents reveal, this was a CIA-cleared attorneys panel that was at work in New Orleans. Attorneys that the agency had vetted in advance so that they would be suitable for use for their covert operation and could be trusted in their aims. The fact that Shaw's lawyers were privy to such CIA secret knowledge and utilized it shows just how willing and eager they were to involve themselves in covert help and then lie about it. In addition to Sheridan, James Phelan, and Hugh Ainsworth joined the media chorus attacking Garrison. Those all also had strong ties to the intelligence community. Phelan's hit piece was published in the Saturday Evening Post, which was eventually bought by Servas. There's no boundaries, none, And they are willing to do anything to coerce people. And if you cannot be coerced, they will kill you.
Well, they also, I mean, this is back in 1967, so not too long after all this, because I know October 3rd, 66, we went back to 61. But on February 17th of 1967, Playboy does an interview with Jim Garrison, and it's called A Candid Conversation with the Embattled District Attorney of New Orleans. And what would that do? That would put him in the limelight, whether it's a bad boy or whatever this case is. Everybody knows the notoriety you get when you come onto Playboy again. And when you look at Playboy and CIA and honeypots, that goes right into everything you're talking about. Like, they had everything covered.
Yes. Okay, so in moving forward just a little bit, in 1986, South Africa's Department of Information authorized expenditures of $73 million for more than 160 secret projects to buy politicians and media favorable to the apartheid state. Reverend Moon's Washington Times
There's a name we haven't heard in a while.
Was one of the beneficiaries. Approximately $4.5 million was funneled to Moon's overseas enterprises in South Africa. The South African government bought substantial interest in a chain of more than 60 newspapers in the U.S. Saturday Evening Post publisher Bert Servaas accepted gifts and business deals from South Africa, and more than 200 U.S. journalists toured South Africa with all expense paid trips, according to Covert Information Bulletin. So this is how the real quote unquote mainstream media operates. During the time the Evening Post was owned by Curtis Publishing, i.e. Servaas, they published more than a dozen pro-South African articles. In 1976, Servaas and his wife, Court, the publisher and editor of the Saturday Evening Post, visited South Africa on an all-expense-paid trip hosted by the South African government. Later, Bert Servaas was made a large stockholder in a South African newspaper, The Citizen, and a director of the South African news photo agency, Afropix. At the time, those two enterprises were secretly owned by the South African government. Servaas was awarded the stock and director positions, though he contributed no financial investment at all to either venture. In exchange for the South African government largesse, Servaas allowed the Evening Post to become a mouthpiece of covert propaganda for the South African government. Oh, and let's not forget one small little detail since we're talking about Bert Servaas. His daughter married a man by the name of Tim Durham. Timothy Durham was an American lawyer and businessman that was convicted in 2012 for the largest corporate fraud scam ever investigated by the FBI in Indiana. His investment firm, Obsidian Enterprises, invested in a number of companies, including wireless device companies, Brightpoint, and several others, where Durham was the CEO. In 2012, Durham was sentenced to 50 years in prison for setting up a Ponzi scheme that defrauded 5,400 investors, most of them elderly, of approximately $216 million, according to the SEC. For his crimes, Bloomberg News nicknamed Durham the Madoff of the Midwest. Durham soon joined the investment firm owned by his wife's father in Indianapolis, Bert Servaas. In 2001, he took his company, Obsidian, public. Obsidian was borrowing heavily from Fair Finance Company. And when you start digging into the actual documents of this case looks exactly like all of those other cases that I've looked into, where they're doing several things. They're money laundering, number one. And in order to make their organization look legit, they have normal customers, but the main purpose of the operation is to collapse it after they've basically used it to generate millions and millions of dollars worth of laundered money for the CIA. And this looks just like them. They were huge fundraisers for the Republican Party. And interestingly enough, this criminal son-in-law was on the steering committee for Mitch Daniels' successful gubernatorial bid in 2004. The same Mitch Daniels. I think he's at Purdue right now. Oh, and who else came from Indiana? Wouldn't you know that Mike Pence's district is part of this entire Indianapolis? So here's Indianapolis. Mike Pence's district goes right up to the edge. And as a matter of fact, when they redistrict, it included part of the city of Indianapolis on the south side, all of it over to Ohio. While this guy is running all of the finance campaigns of all of the people during that time. So, and just to put a bow on it, FBI and CIA affiliated George Miller, who we mentioned earlier, would leave 3 eyes, and you will never in your wildest imagination guess where George Miller went to work after leaving 3 eyes.
Where?
USAID, ring a bell?
Oh my gosh. Jeez.
Not just USAID. What part of USAID did he go to work for?
I have no idea.
Office of Public Safety.
We talked about that, like that was last year.
Office of Public Safety is the CIA sheep dipping into USAID, where they set up black site prisons, taught all of the national police how to kidnap, torture, and kill people. That Office of Public Safety that was ran throughout Operation Condor. But do you know where he went to work for the Office of Public Safety? In Saigon.
Where?
Saigon, Vietnam, where they were running the Phoenix program. Office of Public Safety. Now, let me just tell you how insidious this is. So I found, much to my chagrin, because I'm an IU grad, Indiana University was part of the Michigan program. So the one that only ever gets talked about when you look at the how the Office of Public Safety with USAID was set up. They had a whole bunch of CIA guys pretend to be professors at Michigan. But then I later found out, unfortunately, IU was involved in it too. And those professors supposedly, under their professor credentials, set up the much of the Office of Public Safety in Saigon that was helping the CIA build all of the prisons out that they tortured all of those people and killed all those people in once they had kidnapped them. They set one up on an island just off the coast of Vietnam. And what's so weird about this? Do you remember the name Dan Meterone?
I do. I can't remember that name.
All right. Dan Meterone, Office of Public Safety, was the guy in Uruguay that was killing all the Tupamares. And the Tupamares kidnapped him and killed him. And he's the one that had the state funeral once he died, and the Secretary of State came to it, for this dumb retired cop. Well, if you remember, he was a cop from Richmond, Indiana, which, if you look at Richmond, Indiana, is not that far from Indianapolis. And it is also the hometown of Jim Jones. He was Jim Jones' childhood friend.
This is wild.
All right. So this same guy, one of the other guys that was there. So that's George Miller. One of the other guys that was there, George Ryan. He would go on to be an executive at Creole Petroleum Company in Venezuela. Creole Petroleum Company in Venezuela was well known as a CIA front. Now, I got one more. James Hannah Meyer. He also was an employee director of Three Eyes. And we would later find him working in the CIA's Office of Special Intelligence on Formosa/Taiwan. So, just to recap, Taiwan, opium trafficking capital of the world, Venezuela, CIA front, Office of Public Safety, Phoenix program in Saigon, all out of this one little company called Three Eyes in Indianapolis, Indiana, that no one's ever heard of.
Never.
That was wiretapping all of the places just prior to JFK's assassination.
They've had to have modified into entities of today.
100%. This all worked for them. They're not going to give up what works.
They're not. So, and I know we're going to talk more about it. It's just, where are they today?
Yes. But I think for those of us who know all of this background, as soon as they said that chick went to work for Microsoft, and I was like, of course she did. It's just like the Secret Service chick that left and then came back and was in charge of the Secret Service during Butler, was hit out in Coca-Cola or PepsiCo, which I think she went, I don't know, one of them, but all well-known. And of course, Microsoft directly tied to CIA. So that's what they're doing. They take these people out of the government and they sheep dip them into these organizations where they think that they're in the quote unquote private sector. That does not mean they're still not doing the same exact shit under the cover of some company, whether it's a corporation or these private intelligence organizations or whatever. And so learning about how they've done all of this in the past that we can actually document is critical for us to be able to figure out where that network is today.
And people may disagree with me. I firmly believe that Trump knows exactly what that network looks like. And here's why. Go ahead.
So when we get to week after next, I'm going to prove that.
Okay, then I will save it. I'll save my comment. I'll write it.
No, go ahead. Go ahead and say it, because it'll be the perfect lead in.
Okay, so when last Thursday, when Trump addressed the nation and he talked about China, and their election exploitation unit, I believe is what he called it, the PRC and the CCP. He said they're paying influencers. Now, with my speculation and my background, I don't think this exploitation unit called up, John Smith podcaster and said, hey, we want you to push this narrative and we're going to drop you 10 grand, because that's just way too obvious. But when we understand the way these shell companies work and these newspaper companies and these Radio Free America and all these things, then you can start to see, okay, well, maybe this exploitation unit was working with this whatever affiliate, sponsor, whatever you want to call it, that's feeding money into this media company. And with that, there's certain agenda and scripts that come. And then this media company then facilitates those scripts out to these podcasters or Substack writers or whatever, or if social media influencers, and says, hey, we want you to push this narrative here. I truly believe they have this mapped out. Now, something else to support it for next week is if we go back, and I wish I had the Anon's name that posted this. I'll be talking about it on Monday's show. When Elon took over Twitter, shortly thereafter, he made a comment, and he says, Twitter is a crime scene. And for those of you that don't know, and I've been talking about this since last year, and now you have people like Jack Posobiec, you could argue intelligence asset there too. But nonetheless, 2 nights ago, he comes out and he says there are investigations into influencers getting paid by foreign entities. I think this is all going to come to the surface, Colonel.
Well, isn't the name of the media company Sinclair that was FARA for Israel? Isn't that the name of the one in North Carolina that I'm pretty sure that's the name of it.
It does sound familiar. It does.
Okay. So there is an entity, whatever the name of it is, that registered right ahead of that whole big explosion of millions of dollars coming from Israel to influence podcasters. Okay. So whatever that entity is in North Carolina. And, Hugh Hewitt and a whole bunch of other those people. I don't think he's with them anymore, but I think he retired, but there was a whole list of them. And there is a couple of, I think Laura Trump's podcast is through there. I suspect that there was, regardless of what money exchanged, because I don't even know how visible that is, that if you were running a sting and you have a legitimate media company register as a FARA representative of Israel, and you draw all of the attention to that particular one, where then other people who may have not been as open about their connections to Israel go, oh, well, they're doing it, and they don't know they're actually doing it. They just know they registered to do it. So they become a lot more flagrant because now they think they have top cover. And wouldn't it be very interesting if the rug gets pulled out and they discover, no, everything about that operation was completely legitimate, but now we've got you, and we've got this company, and we've got this company, and some of these companies didn't register, and some of them now got emboldened to register and take those talking points, because people, you think that's far-fetched. It's not. That's exactly what they did in Operation Greylord in Chicago, where you give the appearance that you're one of them. And that allows them to get a lot less covert about their own operations, and it emboldens them to be a lot more flagrant about that relationship. And if you pay really close attention, right after that happened, and there was all that brouhaha that got published about, oh my gosh, look, the Trumps are associated with this and blah, blah, blah. There were several that we suspected of Israeli influence that got a whole lot more bolder about their Israeli influence operations in their podcast. I mean, one may be doing something right now that's extremely bold in a foreign country. So I'm just throwing that out there, but that's exactly what you would do if you want to light up networks.
That's why you turn down every offer to buy this podcast. Maybe somebody had some good intentions and they wanted to, but more than likely, people wanted to take ownership in order to do demolition. And that's why my advice has been to everybody that's starting is don't sign a contract. Keep it yours. Do it the long, slow way. And when things balance out, get more transparent, and we figure it out, if people value and they want to buy you, they'll want to buy you then too. And if they don't, well, then you can get suspicious of why they wanted to do it when you were much smaller and had less reach. So a lot of wild stuff coming in. I'll tell you guys this. I got a little hint towards what next week looks like.
Well,
And
it's not the big thing is not going to be next week. We've got one more of these to go through.
Okay.
And then the next week after that, we're going to tie them all together, and it's explosive.
I'm gonna be like this during the whole podcast. I'm gonna wear a mask to look like CanCon or Josh or something like that. It's gonna stir up some people's emotions. I'm telling you, I already know I'm gonna get phone calls after that one. So, and let it be. I'll be like, well, since you're on the phone, can I ask you a few questions? Colonel, where can people find you? What do you got coming up? And shout out to Warhamster, did a phenomenal post. My day's blend, I think it was yesterday or the day before, and reshared it, and it was based off stuff that you guys were talking about.
Yeah, last Friday. We've been covering some very interesting things that have applicability to today in every way. So yeah, he basically took a lot of what we were talking about and put it in a post from last Friday's show. And yeah, excellent. So we will be doing another noon Friday show with Warhamster, and I'm just hanging out doing my 4:00 show talking about heroin and all of these nefarious intelligence organizations that just keep popping up all over everywhere at 4:00 on Spaces and Rumble.
There you guys have it. Those links are down in the description on whatever platform you're watching on. So make sure you go and follow and support the Colonel. And then go to the Gladio store. You'll see that as the first link as well. We had a couple Rumble rants and some super chats came in from YouTube. So over there on Rumble, dollar for dollar, GFontes119 says, interesting, where public schools and local libraries spend money for any number of publications, many that help pad people's pockets, whether or not they get anything other than an invoice. And then to continue with GFontes119, example, my high school, college, and city library cooperative all claim to have Solinsky's rules for radicals, and I never got to see theirs despite decades on these waiting lists. And then shout out $20 coming in from Breadmaker62. Love our Colonel, Semper Paratus, and much love to you both. Thank you. And then the boom diggity coming in right behind Breadmaker, $50 Rumble rant. Very interesting. The companies like Sinclair use top cover and call their shell companies sidecar agreements. So very interesting there. And then over here on YouTube, let's start from the bottom. We have from Butternut741, 10 gems with a thumbs up. We have from Shine On, 440 gems. UNC alert. Love that. That's pretty cool. And then we have another one from Shine On, 440 gems, UNC alert. Hopefully they didn't double charge you and you were trying to do that twice. So thank you for that. We have Al Phelps, $5 super chat. No need to mention me for my little super chat. I know you guys appreciate it. Thank you all. You're getting love just like everybody else. Thank you for supporting the show. And then we have Let's Get to the Truth, 10 gems with the gold coin. I need to get a gold coin so I can flip it. And then we have another one again from Let's Get to the Truth, 10 gems with the gold coin. And then at the last minute, we got $5 coming in from ZBM over on Rumble. So glad y'all are covering ZA tonight. I have a friend over there, and there is so many things I don't understand about what's happening over there. Just crazy, scary shit happening. Cheers, guys. You guys, thank you for the support. If you haven't done so already, smash the thumb, hit the heart, leave a comment, go follow the Colonel, and I will see you guys in 50 minutes. Remember, we're doing Overwatch and the Guardian tonight, not tomorrow night, because poor old Josh will be traveling. So with that, we'll catch you guys in the next one. Good night. God bless. Hold on. I almost did the same mistake that I did last week, Colonel. There. Now I got it set. Thanks for being with us, Colonel. I'll catch you guys next time. Semper